Hello and welcome to the PowerPod. I'm your host, Matthew Cohen, and today I am delighted to welcome back onto the show Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem and Israel's Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation. Fleur, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me back. How are we? Right, well, we're not running to shelters this week, but, it's been tough. It's been tough.
Of course, I can only imagine. And that's actually something I wanted to speak to you about today, Fleur, because we've seen how the ceasefire, as you alluded to, went into effect a couple of days ago. But unfortunately, something that's happening in international media, and I'm seeing it a lot with the South African media, is, again, the sort of misinformation. They're, first of all, making two very big allegations. The first being that Israel is attacking Hezbollah, but without saying that Hezbollah themselves have also been attacking Israel. And then the second one that really seems to stand out is this idea that because of what's going on the Israel-Hezbollah front, Israel is somehow putting the entire ceasefire at risk for all involved. And I actually wanted to read a specific headline from the SABC, which is the government broadcaster, saying huge Israeli strikes on Lebanon threaten Iran truce. And just as it says in its opening paragraph, Israel bombed more targets in Lebanon, putting the US-Iran ceasefire into further jeopardy after the biggest Israeli attacks on its neighbor. And this threatens to torpedo US President Donald Trump's truce. So, yes, Fleur, could you perhaps give a response to that? And is there any truth in what they're saying?
Well, first of all, let's make something clear. The Hezbollah attacks on Israel were never part of the ceasefire. So when America and Iran decided to try negotiations after a ceasefire, that never included Lebanon. It never included it. Now, what's going on in Lebanon and why are we in this situation? It's very simple. When the Iran war started with the US and Israel attacking nuclear targets in Iran, attacking IRGC targets in Iran, Hezbollah could have stayed out of it. They didn't have to reopen a front. We had a ceasefire with them from a year ago. We also have 2 UN resolutions that there can't be any Hezbollah fighters south of the Litani River, which they have broken, and which the UN through UNIFIL have been completely incapable of ensuring those resolution 1701. Now, why did they join the war? They joined the war because the Islamic Republic of Iran said to them, we've been funding you for 30 years, pay up now, and start attacking Israel. They had the choice, but they didn't have the choice because they are simply an arm, a proxy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, if they would have not attacked Israel after the Iran-US-Israel war started, then nothing would have happened in Lebanon. But they made the mistake of attacking Israel. And if the UN is incapable and the whole international community are incapable of making any effect of that resolution 1701, it's very simple. Israel will do the job because we have hundreds of thousands of people who live in the north of Israel. And if we don't do something about it, then we won't be able to live. We won't be able to inhabit in the north of Israel because they keep sending rockets. So they've sent thousands and thousands of rockets. And so when the media report that Israel is attacking Lebanon, what they fail to mention is the fact that Hezbollah, who are a foreign occupier of Lebanon from a proxy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, started this. And they can start it because Israel never starts any war, but Israel will finish it. And so again, they could just stop firing right now, but they don't. All day today, they've been firing rockets to the north of Israel. And so Israel will continue to do what it's supposed to do and protect its people by trying to get rid of the terrorists that are throwing rockets and artillery at Israel from the south of Lebanon. But the difference today is that the Lebanese people are coming and speaking out and saying, we are not Hezbollah. We don't want Hezbollah. Hezbollah has occupied our country illegally for 30 years, and all they've brought us is destruction and bloodshed. and we want Hezbollah out. And this is why tomorrow, Tuesday, the US, under the US auspices, Israel and the legitimate Lebanese government will be meeting to start normalization talks, peace talks. Let's see what happens with that. But of course, the South African government media is going to be biased, as is the South African government, who have sold their souls to the Islamic Republic of Iran. What's going to be interesting is what's going to happen to South Africa when the Islamic Republic of Iran falls, which it will. They've already signed their death warrant, and it's going to take months or a year, but they will fall. What will happen to the corrupt South African government when their paymasters fall? Who else are they going to attach themselves to? China, perhaps? Or Russia? We'll see. We'll see what other brutal dictatorship the South Africans decide to champion.
Of course. And it's also quite interesting to me how it's not even the entire government, because, of course, there's a coalition. It's just the ANC, yet for whatever reason, they've decided, even though they lost their majority, that they're just going to hijack their entire country and continue down this dangerous path.
It's not whatever reason. It's not whatever reason. They've sold themselves. They, Iran, as they've pumped into money to Hezbollah, they've pumped money into South Africa.
Right. It's just sad that they decided to attach themselves to one of the global pariahs.
Well, when you mismanage your government and you're broke, then it's the brutal mafia who lend you the money who want their money back in other ways.
Of course. But something that you said that really piqued my interest, Fleur, is how the Lebanese people are becoming more vocal and saying they're not part of Hezbollah. And then on top of that, the fact that Lebanon is not included in the ceasefire deal, because what we've actually seen now is how the Lebanese government, first of all, have been very vocal in condemning Hezbollah, which they never have in the past. But we also saw the other day, I was reading one of the Lebanese newspapers, and it explained how the president, Joseph Aoun, was saying he wants to make sure that Lebanon gets included in the ceasefire agreement. So now I'm thinking to myself, clearly that's showing that they weren't originally included. If you're still trying to get them included.
They were never included. And even worse than that, Matt, the main accusation at the moment is that Israel about a week ago attacked 200 targets in Lebanon, in a lot of them in Beirut. These targets were all, of course, Hezbollah targets. But what's coming out every single day is that the reason Israel timed it when it did is because Hezbollah was planning a coup to take over. I mean, they're already part of the government, but to take over the rest of the government and to take over the Lebanese military. And Israel pushed up its timeline for this incredible operation in order to prevent a coup of Hezbollah taking over now the entire country. So I think the people in Lebanon, the voices that are saying, why do we have beef with Israel? What have they ever done, except for trying to get rid of the threat that is existential to them from the northern border? A lot of those voices are saying, well, why don't we have peace and normalization with Israel? And so the Islamic Republic find themselves not just weak in themselves, but also their proxies weakening every single day.
Of course. And especially when it comes to sort of the death toll, something that really alarms me, just while we're on that note, is the fact that we see how the media yet again puts a spin on it. And I actually was reading an article this morning, and I'd like to actually bring it up. It's from a newspaper called IOL. Now, most people in South Africa and actually a few other countries know IOL. And just for a bit of context, they were actually expelled from the South African Press Council due to their questionable journalism standards. So that already lays the picture out. But so even they were too extreme.
So what did those geniuses say?
Well, those geniuses have now come out saying that Israel is bombing more targets, putting the US-Iran ceasefire into further jeopardy, as we've already covered. But here's the new part, that the war on Israel's neighbor has resulted in the deaths of over 2,000 civilians in southern Lebanon. Fleur, does that sound accurate to you?
Look, they consider everybody civilians. It's a bit like Hamas in Gaza. Israel is only targeting terrorists. Israel is only targeting Hezbollah. And from our numbers, we know that at least 75 to 80% of the casualties have been combatants. And so it's always tragic when innocent people lose their lives as casualties of war. And this is never Israel's intention, which is the opposite of their intention, which is to hit as many civilian targets as possible. We've notified the people of southern Lebanon, and that's why 1 million of them have moved. Why did we notify them? Why did we give up our power of surprise? We did it because we don't want civilian casualties. Will there be civilian casualties from war? War is terrible. War is disgusting. Nobody wants war. But they started it, and that's what people keep forgetting.
Right. So just to clarify, Flo, you say that according to the Israeli estimates, it's around 75 to 80% who are believed to be combatants.
Yes.
Okay.
But they will never make that distinction. They never make that distinction. When they say 65,000 people died in Gaza, they also don't say that half of them were combatants. Apparently they're all children. 70,000 children, 80,000 children, 100,000 children. It's all lies and propaganda because these people, including the Islamic Republic of Iran, know they can't win the military battle. They can't win the military battle against America. They can't win the military battle against Israel. We're too strong. So what can they win? They can win the propaganda war because there's a lot of useful tools around the world that is happy to parrot the Islamic regime propaganda. Why? Because they hate themselves, because they hate Jews, because they hate America, for many different reasons.
Of course. And you actually took the words out of my mouth there, because just this morning I was looking up the casualty numbers, and what was really interesting on the Lebanese health ministry side is that they give you the toll, but they actually said it does not distinguish between combatants and civilians. So by their own admission, they don't know.
Yeah, it's better than Hamas. Right. Hamas presents everybody. Everybody's a child under 15
Everybody's a
years
toddler.
Old. Everybody's a toddler.
My goodness. Yeah. Right. And that actually brings me on to probably one of the most peculiar claims that I've heard to date, which is actually on the Iran front. So any South African watching this will know who Julius Malema is and who the EFF political party is. And they came out with a press statement the other day. And in the statement, they said, the EFF commends the Islamic Republic of Iran for its resilience and strategic victory over the combined aggression of the US and Israel. They then go on to say that this is a humiliation of the US, which follows in the same trajectory seen in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis and decades of blockade, and in Iraq, where the US unleashed destruction but failed to secure legitimacy or victory. So I guess it's a two-part question. On one hand, is this really a US and Israeli defeat? And on the other hand, does this mirror those prior conflicts?
Well, let's see who's alive, shall we? Netanyahu and Trump are still alive, and Ali Khamenei's dead. His son is apparently completely disfigured and doesn't have a leg. Almost the entire IRGC leadership gone. The Navy's gone. 80% of their missile launchers gone. And so, look, these people will be half dead and still put a V sign and said that they won. Because again, all they've got is the propaganda war, and all they've got are their tools shilling for them, like the South African government. And so that's what you've got. I actually think, the ceasefire talks have broken down. And in a few hours, we will see what happens with the US blockade of Hormuz. All of the Gulf countries are finding alternative ways of getting energy, which means that what the Islamic Republic of Iran have actually done is they've taken the Straits of Hormuz hostage, but what they've done is they've signed their own death warrants because people and countries are finding alternative routes, which means whatever they were providing the world in terms of energy, including China, is now going to find alternatives. And so, look, let me tell you something, Matt. The Islamic Republic of Iran will fall. Whether it'll fall today, next week, next month, or next year is unclear. But fall they will. They've got nowhere to go.
Right. I actually was very curious to speak to you about that. So, as mentioned, we've seen the ceasefire come into effect, but as we know in the history of the Middle East, ceasefires generally don't have a very successful track record. So, regarding the sort of short-term status of everything, in your assessment, Fleur, do you believe that the ceasefire will hold? And based on your answer, where do you think the conflict will progress to from here?
I don't think the ceasefire will hold. I mean, J.D. Vance, we heard him yesterday saying that it failed, and that they don't even want to talk about getting rid of their uranium enrichment capacity, that there's nobody to talk to, basically. They've come back. The Islamic Republic is negotiating like they've got something to negotiate with. And President Trump
Right.
is basically taking the Straits of Hormuz off the table. And so that's what I'm saying. They're going to lose. The question is when. The ceasefire won't hold. The question is, does the next phase of the war mean that it's what we've seen so far, which is bombing and getting rid of infrastructure? Or are we going into a new phase of conflict? Conflict is not just about military war. There's many different phases. Conflict is also about, sanctions. Conflict is about internal unrest. There's lots and lots that could happen, but mark my words, the Islamic Republic has already signed their own death warrant. And it's not about if, it's about when.
Interesting. So I'll definitely take those words seriously, and I advise the audience to do the same. It's actually quite interesting that you brought up the negotiations, because I also happen to notice how Iran really seemed to walk in there thinking that they the ones in charge. I mean, going and
They have
saying
the
that
upper
you go
hand.
in.
They have the upper hand, And the thing is that the mainstream media in America and around the world has made them believe that they have the upper hand because of their
Right.
terrible coverage, unpatriotic coverage. They're making people believe that Israel and the US are losing this war. Are they nuts? What does losing a war mean? You get rid of the enemy? That's what we're doing.
Right. And I think also that they just being unrealistic with the expectations, they're going and saying, oh, look, Israel and the US haven't won yet. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a little over a month since this started. Look at
Exactly.
any other war in history.
Look at the Second World War, how long it took. In a month, we've gotten rid of the majority of their defensive and offensive capacity. Give it another month and they're done. And this is before the Iranian people take to the streets again, because they will, and they're ready.
Oh, okay. Well, now you've actually foreshadowed what I was going to ask you. That was actually something that I wanted to know specifically is, of course, we know militarily, it seems that the US and Israel will win. It's just a matter of when rather than if, as you mentioned. But that was actually something that I'm curious to know is whether or not you see the regime falling, not necessarily just in terms of the war, but if we are going to see people take to the streets again, just given the, massive death tolls that we saw back in January.
Look, back in January, these brave people took to the streets, not knowing if anybody was going to come to help them. And nobody did in that moment.
Right.
And people say, why aren't the Iranians on the streets? They're not on the streets because we haven't asked them to go on the streets yet. Because we've actually, America and even Israel and Reza Pahlavi, their kind of, let's say, transitional leader, has said, wait, because the US and Israel are still downgrading their capacity. So until they continue downgrading that capacity, what's the point of having more people who are going to die on the streets? We're trying to wait for the maximum moment when they're at their weakest, and then people will come out on the streets. But they will come out. They haven't been asked to yet.
Right. That does make a lot of sense. And when that does happen, and let's say the regime falls, you get more of a palatable government in Iran, and let's say Iran is basically normalizes ties with Israel and the West. What do you imagine would happen with its proxies, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis?
Well, there will no longer be the strategic threat they were to Israel and to the world. Hezbollah's done, really. They're cooked without the Islamic Republic. They get all the money from them. The Houthis, there will be a realignment in the Middle East, and the Houthis will also, become extinct, I think. Hamas is another problem because Hamas is not just getting help from the Islamic regime, but I also believe that in the post-war realignment of the Middle East, when the Sunni moderate Arab countries become a much more, I would say, crystallized power with the US, in that post-war world, Hamas will also shrink and hopefully die.
Right. And then one final question that I have for you in that regard. Do you believe that there are any other threats at this moment in time to Israel in the Middle East? Or do you think that it's more a situation of gearing up, making sure that you have the right intelligence on the ground and just preventing whatever may crop up in the future?
Israel faces many threats. We have the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. We have Hamas. We have all the groups in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. We have the Houthis shooting at us. We have many, many, many enemies. But the head of the snake is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And whilst they're not going to disappear and please God, when the Islamic Republic falls, but they will certainly not be the strategic threat that they are today. They will be less vicious, less armed, less money, less resources, and probably pretty isolated, I would say.
Right. Well, Fleur, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me. Just for those who might not be familiar with all your work, where can people follow you and see more of what you're up to?
Well, I've got a YouTube channel, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. My handles are Fleur Hassan N in X and in Instagram, and my full name also for Facebook. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Perfect. So anybody who is interested in following Fleur and seeing what she's up to, make sure to do so. And of course, if you enjoy this content and you'd like to see more, remember to subscribe to this channel as well. Fleur, thanks again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Please remember to like the video and subscribe for more content. And until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.